Welcome to the Wellness at Work podcast, brought to you by the Learning and Development Projects at Silberman School of Social Work, Hunter College. This is a series of conversations designed to inspire wellness in helping professionals. Our conversations will focus on understanding the importance of self-care, reducing trauma, and bringing to listeners new ideas and practices that promote wellness at work and in your professional life. Welcome to our show today.
Hello, thanks for joining us for the second episode of Wellness and Work. Today we're going to be focusing on a different aspect of wellness and work. I'd like to introduce my partner and colleague and friend, Stacey Plichta. She's a professor from the CUNY School of Public Health. Stacey, welcome.
Hi, Geoff. Thank you. I'm really glad to be back and excited to continue our conversation.
So, this whole thing about wellness and work, I think it's so important. Where should we pick this up, Stacey? Where do you want to, how are we going to focus today?
One of the things we can talk about is the importance, I think, of caseworkers feeling and professionals who help others feeling their successes. There's a lot of stress in this job. There are a lot of obstacles that, people who are working with others who need help, face, and not all of those are surmountable. But there also are a lot of successes. There are a lot of things that caseworkers and others who help folks do that work and work really well. And it's, I think, hard sometimes to feel those successes when the big picture can still look bleak. So when a caseworker is coming in to help somebody and they're able to get some things done and done really well, and then other things simply don't happen, a lot of times that person will focus on what didn't happen. And so instead of really feeling and owning that success and being buoyed up, being lifted up by that success, they're going to be sort of pushed down by the parts that didn't work yet.
So, Stacey, would you say it's important to define success in many different contexts?
Absolutely. So when we're talking about success with working with clients, it's important to acknowledge the parts of success at each step. So there are clients that when you knock on their door, they don't even want to talk to you. Simply getting in the door is a success. Being able to talk with a client and have them tell you, what's going on, really open up to you is a success. And so, feeling those along the way is critical to the health of caseworkers.
So what I hear you're saying is that success is also premised on the centering around the client as well as centering around the practitioner, around the caseworker.
Yes. Success is really centered on both because the client and the caseworker are a team, and ideally they're working together, and the client might not always realize that. The caseworker knows this, but the client, one of the successes is when the client really owns that and feels that. And feels like they're part of this alliance to improve their own lives. And that doesn't happen right away.
So drawing them in, it's a partnership rather than us and them, us being practitioners, them being people that we serve, as opposed to a collaboration.
I would argue it's both. So it's a partnership and a collaboration. It's, where the person, obviously the professional, the caseworker, is leading in the sense that they're coming in with the knowledge that there's a problem, and they're coming in with the knowledge about resources about how to help the client. But the client very much has autonomy and has a voice in this. And so, and unless there's a relationship between the two, things might still get accomplished, but it's not going to feel right.
So, in can you say in a word or a couple of words why is this important, particularly to the
So,
practitioner?
so for the practitioner, there's an idea that we talked about briefly last time called compassion satisfaction.
Hmm.
And compassion satisfaction is very simply the good feelings that you feel when you help somebody else and you see that it worked. We are wired to be altruistic. There is a large body of research, not just with humans, but with other mammals, that shows that we are absolutely wired to help others. And when we help others, it creates a physical reaction in our brain that we'll talk about a little later. It kicks off our relaxation response. The hormones are released, once, when we help others, we feel good. And that feeling good is a physical response to having done something good. And with that compassion satisfaction can help a professional move, you know, move through the difficult parts of a case because they've gotten to feel good about the parts that went well.
Okay, so and this is going to seem a little bit out of left field, but just how does storytelling factor into this process?
We are storytellers. Humans are storytellers. We have been storytelling since we first had language. There's really early evidence of art. There's really early evidence of, oral traditions that were passed down in oral stories long before we had
Hmm.
writing. And storytelling helps us imagine in our mind what happened. And when we live things in our mind, they become real to us.
Mm.
Think about an athlete who's training
Hmm.
for a big game. They rehearse in their minds over and over and over again. They think about each of their moves. They're storytelling to themselves in a sense. When we
Hmm.
storytell to each other, we're sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly. We are bonding with the other, but we're also making it more real for ourselves.
So how are you going to employ this? How can the listener employ this with regard to optimizing their wellness at work?
Tell stories of success, and obviously do it in a way that protects the anonymity of the client.
Hmm.
There are times when one's talking to the supervisor, where you're allowed to talk details about your client, and you know much more about those rules than I do. But the general story, or the story of maybe a composite of 3 or 4 clients, which is still a true story, um, again helps to cement that. For example, there's a story that one of the caseworkers told me at a conference that really stayed with me. It's a story of success, and I just like to share it with you briefly because it has so many great pieces.
Hmm.
And it's not a long story. So this worker worked in a rural county and was telling me about a client who was hoarding, and the hoarding was to the point where it was dangerous for the client to stay in their home.
Hmm.
It was one of those cases where there was a narrow pathway, you could barely walk in.
Yeah.
There was no way to keep this place clean. There was food that was rotten. Yeah. And, but for the client, who didn't have any family left, they were pretty much all alone in the world.
Hmm.
They're rural, they had some neighbors, but nobody that close. These objects, being surrounded by these objects, represented safety. This was their life surrounding them. This wasn't
Hmm.
junk or garbage to them. And the caseworker recognized this and came up with an incredibly clever solution. The caseworker got a storage unit, and by working with the client, by creating what Carl Rogers calls a therapeutic alliance, by not judging the client, um, and by really bonding with that client, the caseworker was able to convince the client that the best thing would be to not throw out the things they were hoarding because that would horrify the client, right? This is
Hmm.
like throwing out their life. This is all they have left. But to get a storage unit and to store all of these things that were important to the client in the storage unit. The client agreed. And, the caseworker was able to get the funds to get the storage unit, to get the move, to get the deep cleaning, all that stuff. And about once a week, the caseworker takes the client to go visit their things. The client sees their things, they feel secure, they're living in a house that's no longer an active danger to them. And, as I'm telling this story secondhand,
Right.
I'm feeling good.
Right.
And so I think the important thing with stories is they help us to feel good as we tell them, but they help other people to feel good. And then they help others to tell their stories.
So there's also what I hear in this is the caseworker listened to the story or to listen to the narrative of the client, and the client's narrative at that point was, this is valuable to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then from that perspective creates what you say, which is brilliant. I love the idea of a therapeutic alliance in a way that resolves the risks, but also upholds the client-centered quality of that scenario. And that really is very meaningful. The interesting thing is, and what you're also talking about was the aspect of making you feel good, because it was almost like, well, there's going to be a happy ending to this story. And I want to sort of turn on that and say, you can be successful where it doesn't always work out. Is that?
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
What does that sound like?
It's harder. Not all stories are happy.
Right.
But all stories express something. And I think it's really important for caseworkers and for supervisors to recognize this, that we need to connect with the sad feelings as well as with the good feelings. And to be able to recognize what we did right in light of things, even when they go wrong.
Right.
So what that looks like is it's very possible for a caseworker to do everything right and to still have a client, to still not have the success they were hoping for. But that doesn't mean there weren't successes along the way. It's important for a case, to be able to see what went right, and to understand that even when you do everything right, sometimes the outcome isn't right because things aren't deterministic. There's so many factors involved. We can do everything right for a client and they can still die in the most extreme.
Well, but at the same point, you can still pull from that. There's so much successful practice, even though the outcome wasn't ideal. And I mean, obviously the client passing away is not ideal, but I hear what you're saying in terms of success can still be extracted from a situation which does not feel as successful because the outcome wasn't successful.
And this is probably something where it would take a supervisor to really help the caseworker see the success, because when you've done everything right and it doesn't work, it's demoralizing. And acknowledging that's important. Being able to know that two things can be true. I could have been very successful at implementing all of the things that should have worked and worked really hard to do that. And it could also be true that that approach did not work for that client. It doesn't mean, and this is the really, I think, hard thing for people to internalize, it doesn't mean that the caseworker was a failure. It's still sad. And so acknowledging the sadness, acknowledging if there's a loss, or acknowledging the not being able to be ultimately successful is important. But along with that, being able to see all the work you put into it as not being wasted, and very few things are black and white. So being able to find what were things along the way that improved the client's life, even if ultimately the caseworker didn't get the outcome they wanted.
So, Stacey, we've talked a lot about stress, and I feel like this is a good place for us to really sort of talk about the biology of stress, stressors, and how that all works in your brain.
So I think it's important to understand that stress is in your brain, not in your mind, and especially when people have stressful jobs, and they're like facing stressors all the time, you know, they're a lot of times those jobs have an ethos of, well, you should just shrug this off. This is just
Mm,
part of the job, toughen up.
hmm
It's very hard to toughen up when it's your brain doing it to you.
hmm
And so, there's two like separate things going on. And I think the first is to understand that the stress response is autonomic. So part of our nervous system is the autonomic nervous system, and that's in what we would call the lizard brain, right? So stress response, anything with a backbone has it, not just humans,
Right, right,
and it's a survival response. So
right,
if I am like walking along in the woods and a tree is about to fall, it's really good that I get stressed by that so I can move faster and get out of the way. Ultimately, it's a rapid, involuntary reaction to a perceived threat that prioritizes our survival. And the important thing about this is that it's rapid and it's involuntary. So when we feel stressed, we're not choosing to feel stressed. Um, it's just like, this is the part of our brain that also controls breathing. We don't walk
mm,
around thinking, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. We just do it. We don't walk around thinking, beat, beat, beat for our heart. We just do it. If if I go to touch my stove top and forgot that I left a burner on and it's hot, I jerk my hand back. I
right,
don't think about doing that. All these things
right.
just happen. The stress response just happens. And it's not a weakness to feel stress and admit to it. It's actually a strength, because we need stress.
hmm
So what happens when we're confronted with the stressor is our brain sounds the alarm, right? So from a physical point of view, and floods our body with a cascade of hormones, among them adrenaline, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol, and a lot of things happen very quickly. And what they're doing, these things happen to get us to fight, flight, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fighting is obvious, right? So we're confronted by a threat and we have to get ready. So how do we get ready? Our breathing, we increase our respiration, we breathe faster, our heart
hmm
rate increases, blood is sent to our extremities so that we can react faster. Digestion shuts right down because when we have a stress response, our brain is prioritizing immediate survival. So if you're one of those people where your stomach hurts when you're stressed, or you can't eat, or you've got diarrhea or constipation, that's because the stress response specifically shuts down digestion.
mm
So we're ready, right? Stress
hmm
happens, we're there.
hmm
And we're to do one of four things. Fight is obvious, run is obvious, hiding or freezing. Think about like if you've ever seen a rabbit or a squirrel suddenly freeze and they think they're invisible.
hmm
I've got one in my yard we call Invisible Bunny because they think they're invisible. Or
I
fawn.
see you.
I
Yes.
see you. I'm like, hi, Invisible Bunny. But so we're doing this, or fawning, which is also a stress response and a trauma response at that, in which we attempt to deal with the stressor or the threat by placating it.
I'd never heard of the fawning, so this is interesting.
And that works, right? So if we have
hmm
somebody who's about to attack us,
hmm
who's bigger than we are, who's a physical threat, being able to talk them down, being able to get on their side, being able um to fawn, to fluff up their egos a little, to
Right,
helps
right,
because
right,
it can keep us safe.
right.
And so those are all the things that happen physically when we're stressed. We're ready.
hmm
And you can ask like what makes us get this response in the first place.
Right.
Some of it's cultural, but they're called stressors. And some things like threats to physical safety are across all cultures. So if there's a threat to your physical safety, you're going to react. your brain is going to kick off the stress response. Other things like being late for work or having a test to study for or having someone yell at us where there's no real threat to our physical safety, but we're still getting yelled at. Some of these are more or less culture bound, and every culture has its own set of things that define what stressors are beyond those physical threats.
Right. So let me ask you something. So these are really these four reactions. These four reactions, are they autonomic, or is there a certain amount of a conscious choice that we employ that comes from experience?
Both.
Okay.
So to some extent, the reaction's autonomic. So if the stressor is something physical, I'm walking across the street and a bus comes barreling at me, I'm not thinking, oh, wait, I better get out of the way.
Right.
I just move out of the way.
Or try to fawn it.
Yes, right. Oh, hello, bus. No. If the threat is a more subtle threat or not this very immediate physical, to some extent, it's automatic, but it's automatic based on all of our past experiences and based on what's worked in the past, So think about, professional caseworker going into a home, getting yelled at by a client. An experienced caseworker knows what to do.
Right.
They have a way of addressing, or someone who does most of their work on the phone with clients and the clients yelling at them. They have routines that they've established that are successful, especially the more seasoned workers. So sometimes it's a choice, like, wait, this is happening, I have to do something. And sometimes we just react.
So, but for new people, new folks who are new to this work, how do these reactions, because I'm curious about, yes, I can see a seasoned person understands sort of the logistics, but if you're brand new, I remember my first visit as a caseworker was to this building or this apartment all the way in the upper reaches of Manhattan. And I was shadowing an experienced caseworker, and we walk into the apartment, we knock. First of all, we didn't just like walk in.
Right.
We knocked. Somebody answered.
There's a process.
We fawned our way. I mean, so anyway, when we came in, all of it was the middle of the day. It was like 11:30 in the morning. And it was a bright, sunny day, and all the shades on the curtains were all drawn, and there were people sleeping. And my response was kind of like, what? I didn't know what to make of that. And I guess it turns out that we were walking into what I learned was a crack den. It was like, oh. And so what I guess I'm trying to get to is, when you're new, what responses should you be paying attention to?
Okay. So a couple of things. So, you're new, but presumably you've had some training. So we don't just send caseworkers out to folks' homes with no training, no support. You were there with someone senior.
Right.
And so taking a beat before reacting. And this is where mindfulness comes in. So the more aware we are of our own bodies, the more we'll know when we're having a stress response. Because if people are in a chronically stressed state, they stop recognizing when they're stressed, because that just feels normal.
Right.
So, for example, for me, I know when I start feeling stressed, I feel it rising from my gut. I'll feel it in my stomach, and I feel that stress literally rising up into my body. Other people feel their teeth clench. Other people feel their head hurt, or other people just feel everybody getting to know your body, getting to know, because remember, it's a physical response. If your heart starts beating faster, if your stomach hurts, whatever it is for you. When you feel that, remember, we think a lot faster than we act. Just
Right.
stop in your head,
Mm-hmm.
take a beat,
Mm-hmm.
and it won't look like anything to the people around you because it'll happen much quicker.
Mm-hmm.
And just notice it. It's called metacognition. Just say, wow, I'm feeling really stressed right now.
Mm-hmm.
And just the fact that we notice it, we're still going to be in a stress response, but it can help to break that and give us more agency over how we respond.
Is that the lizard brain talking to you? Is part of
It's
that?
it's absolutely, it's the part of our brain that's helped us survive from the
Right.
very
I see.
beginning.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and so being able to then notice the second thing. So the first thing is notice yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you just take that beat for a second. If you need more time, you can just say to people, let me think about this for a second,
Mm-hmm.
and, breathe because we forget to breathe. Respiration increases when we're stressed. So, but that's like fast. So breathe, take a deep, slow breath, notice what you're feeling, and then notice what the other person's feeling. You can go, wow, that person seems really upset because X. Or, okay, I seem to be in a place where a lot of people are sleeping and it doesn't feel safe.
Right.
Once you've noticed those two things, you've grounded yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can choose your reaction. And that's where training,
Mm.
but I'm not a caseworker. I would absolutely would have no idea what to do in that situation.
Right.
But you had a senior person with you and you were trained. That's when you can engage how you're going to respond once you've grounded yourself.
Is there something you can, so can we wrap this part up by something you can demonstrate or some sort of exercise you can take people through about this
Yeah.
particular?
So, progressive muscle relaxation is a great exercise to become aware of your body. So many of us, and there's so many reasons that we do not have time to discuss, we stop noticing ourselves from the neck down. Either we
Mm-hmm.
don't like our bodies, or we don't want to think about them, or we live in our head so much.
Mm.
So, simply getting to notice and pay attention and appreciate your whole body.
Mm-hmm.
So progressive relaxation feels like this. If you're sitting, let's do it with me.
Okay.
Sitting in a chair, like lean back a little bit. Um,
Mm.
close your eyes if you're comfortable doing so, or just make your gaze soft if you don't really want to close your eyes. And start with your feet. Start with your toes and curl them up. Crunch them really hard for like 5 seconds. Normally we do 10 seconds, but we'll do 5 seconds here. So for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relax them. Now
Mm.
tense up your calves. Notice you have calves. Again, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relax them. Now your thighs. Tense up your thighs. Really think about them, feel them. Feel where you're sitting for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now your glutes or your tush. Just
Mm-hmm.
tense those up. Tense up your glutes and for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You know.
Mm.
And then now your stomach. Tense that up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Tense up your chest for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then relax it, right? Remember to relax after each of these. Now let's go out to our hands. Take your hands, spread your fingers wide, and then make fists for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let your hands go and relax them. Now tense up just your forearms, and you might have to think about it, right? Because we're doing each body part for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Relax those. Tense up your upper arms, not the shoulders yet, just your upper arms for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now take your shoulders, get them all the way up to your ears for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and bring them all the way down. And now tense up your whole face. Make the funniest face you can and really think about your whole face for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Release and relax.
That
And
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 that's
that's
huh, that's amazing. I also felt myself like a little exhale after every time
yeah.
I
And you should right. And you should be breathing through this, and really notice the tense and the relax. Like after you tense each thing, notice that you're relaxing it as well. And that body awareness can help us to both de-stress, but to get used to paying attention to our bodies.
so Stacey, now that I'm nice and relaxed from the progressive relaxation that you took me through, um, let's talk, I mean, about your thoughts about how to break the stress response, and how can we build fortitude or resiliency in the people who are in this work.
Well, just like we have a stress response, that's only half of what our autonomic system does. The
Hmm.
other half is a relaxation response. So most people have heard of fight and flight, you know, or, but many fewer people have heard of rest and digest,
Mm,
right? Have you
I
heard?
have no.
Right. And so rest and digest is the other half of what our autonomic nervous system does. So we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the stress response. And we've talked a lot about that and how that's
Yeah.
in our brains, right? It's
Mm,
physical. We also have our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the other half of the autonomic nervous system. And that's responsible for the relaxation response. Just
mm,
like we have a stress response, we have a relaxation response. So just like we embody stress when our brain sounds the alarm, our brain has a way of turning off that alarm. We embody relaxation when we experience calming stimuli, when we experience things that relax us.
hmm,
Our brain turns off the alarm, and it's also physical, just like
mm,
this response is physical. So when the relaxation response is kicked off, our brain floods our body with hormones, with endorphins, with oxytocin, with dopamine, with serotonin, among other hormones. And in response to all of those hormones, we we have a physical response. Our breathing slows, our heart rate slows, our digestive system comes back online. Right, we're
mm.
able to eat, we're able to process food, we're relaxed. Now, the trick is that we actually have to take action to activate the relaxation response.
So, Stacey, I just want to be clear. So, when we're stressed, it sort of suppresses our appetite.
Yeah, it may or
Oh,
may not suppress our appetite. Some people, when they're stressed, get hungry and eat a lot,
mm-hmm.
but they're not digesting it well.
Mm,
It suppresses
mm.
our digestive system. So some people
Oh,
can't
okay.
eat,
Yeah.
but a lot of folks, when they're stressed, their stomachs hurt.
Right.
Things
Right.
don't work that well going through the whole system. And it's different. The specifics are different for everybody,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. So even if
Thank.
we feel like we want to eat a lot, it's not going to be healthy for us to do that.
Right. Because we're usually, if we're eating a lot, we're eating a lot of fast, hence the term fast
Yes,
food, which is snacks, that sort of thing,
yes.
things that are not, okay.
Which are also inflammatory as a side note by themselves. Fast foods, our body reacts to ultra processed foods and fast foods the way it reacts to any other stressor. And
Oh,
you
that's
get an
interesting.
inflammatory stress response from fast food. So when we talk about inflammation, just again, side note, it's
Right.
it's not just some jargon word. It's a set of physical reactions in our body. So, but we also, when we talk about relaxation,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we it's the opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
and our body reacts to healthy and wholesome whole foods, not with the stress response, but with the relaxation response.
Oh, that's really interesting. So talk some more about how this works. I'm fascinated.
Mhm. So essentially, when we encounter we talk about stressors, and everybody knows the word stressor.
Hmm.
There's also relaxers, you know? So when we encounter something that kicks off the relaxation response, we get the physical response. And like I said, we actually have to take action to do this. So as much as I love laying on the couch and binging Netflix, I could watch an entire season of Call the Midwife while eating ice cream and be really happy. But that's not going to relax me. And I realize it sounds weird, right? I could, because the relaxation response is a physical response that we have to trigger. And
Right.
lots of things trigger it. Exercise triggers it. Mindfulness triggers it.
Mm,
For some people, meditation triggers it, prayer triggers it. There are so many things that we can do. Focusing on something triggers it. There's so many
mm,
things we can do to get that response.
mhm.
But we have to do something.
So what I've heard is something that I do when I can't seem to break the habit of
Mhm.
is I have an iPad on my chest as I'm going to sleep, and I wonder why I don't sleep well.
Oh, words actually fail me here for a second. Not really. Okay, electronic devices trigger a stress response. And it doesn't mean they're not fun. And
Right,
again, not all
right,
stress is bad. I really want to say that. Like, if you're if you're in a bowling league, you want to feel a little stressed. You want to feel a little competitive, right? You don't want to be,
right,
I don't care if we're going to lose. You want that edge, but you want that edge to go away when you don't need it. The
right,
problem with having that electronic device right there is, well, first of all, it's meant to be addictive. So you're going to keep going to it because it's designed for that.
right.
It it's giving you little bits of dopamine and serotonin, which are technically a relaxation response, but you're getting stressed because you're craving more of it, and that craving
Yeah,
is a stress response. So then you're
yeah.
caught in this very rapid cycle, and it's not healthy.
Huh. So I guess I've got to figure that out. I've got to sort of like start to think of other ways that we've been talking about um, that can really help me. So can you talk a little bit more about the aspect of mindfulness?
Mindfulness is one way that we can both activate the parasympathetic nervous system, meaning kick off that relaxation response, but also keep ourselves in that state. So we want to be in a relaxed state most of the time. We need stress. We need the stress response it's a tool. We need it for specific things when we need to react fast, when we need to think fast. But we don't need it all the time. It wears us out. So, mindfulness is simply when our mind, body, and brain are all connected and in the same place and we're focused.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be mindful in so many different ways, and not every way will work for every person. So, for example, doing yoga is a form of mindfulness. Not everybody likes yoga. Not
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and that's okay. It's not the only form.
Mm-hmm.
Reading is a form of mindfulness
Oh,
because when
that's
you're
interesting.
reading,
Mm-hmm.
especially a story, and going back to the stories from the first, when we're
Mm-hmm.
reading a story, we're engaged in the story. We're imagining it in our head. So
Mm-hmm.
we are
Mm-hmm.
there.
Right.
We are there. We are engaged. You know, our body, we're reading the book. We're imagining what's going on. We are focused. Crafting is a form of
Mm.
mindfulness. So for people that do woodworking or crocheting or cooking, but cooking when you're paying attention, not cooking when you're throwing something together while watching TV. You know,
Oh. Oh, another thing I've got to cancel.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, think about someone, when you're cooking something that you haven't made 1,000 times, right? So want to get your mise en place, which is my fancy mispronounced French word for getting all of your ingredients out in advance and set. So you
Yeah.
measure out everything and you really pay attention to it. And you smell the herbs as you're measuring them out. And you make sure you have the ingredients, and then you look at the directions, and and you follow them, and as you're mixing them and you're watching the texture, and you're adding things, and some things you add to taste, like salt,
Hmm.
adding all these things together, you're in that moment, and that's relaxing. And so finding those things where you can be in that moment is important.
What happens when you're having difficulty getting into that moment? What happens when you've had a day where you've had several struggles around clients who are incredibly challenging, and the system isn't working for you in terms of getting to the places that they need, in terms of the services that the clients need? How do you address that? What can somebody do to sort of get back on track in terms of being more mindful about their
Okay.
practice?
First, not beat themselves up because they can't get back on track immediately, right? That just causes more stress.
Mhm.
It's really hard. It's really hard. I have so much respect for caseworkers who work with clients that are struggling with so many different problems, because it's challenging. And so I don't want to say, oh, you can just do this breathing exercise for 2 minutes and it's all good. It's a practice. And
Mhm.
one of the important things is this idea of compassionate detachment. So that in the moment and it takes practice, it's not something that happens overnight, but really learning that when you're with somebody, like being compassionate, being engaged with them, being empathetic,
Mhm.
but then when you leave them, leave that person in their space, you're going back to them, most
Mhm.
likely, right? Or you finished with them and you've done whatever you can do to help.
Mhm.
Well, one way to do that is to do a short breathing exercise between each client.
Oh, can we do that? That'd be a great place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, and it's not going to, it does take time and practice and doing an intentionality, saying, I was with this person, I'm going to take a moment and cleanse with the breath,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to move on. So this is a breathing exercise I really like because it came from the Navy SEALs, and it's called box breathing. And it's an exercise to help us focus. And it's also called 4-4-4 breathing. Um, One caveat, if you have COPD or lung issues, you can do it as 3-3-3 breathing and skip the breath holding part. Right.
Okay.
But I'm going to show it as 4-4-4. Remember, do not hold your breath if it's uncomfortable or unsafe for you.
Okay.
So how we start is we empty out all, and I'm going to talk through it once and then demonstrate it once and then talk through it again. We empty out all of our breath and then breathe in for a count of 4, like a big belly breath, like 4, 3, 2, 1. Now hold that, not clenching, hold it relaxed for 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe it out slowly for 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold empty, not clenched, relaxed for 4, 3, 2, 1. Now breathe in, belly breath. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold it, relaxed, shoulders down. 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe it out slowly. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hold empty. 4, relaxed. 3, 2, 1. Okay, now breathe.
Mhm. Well, I could fall asleep yet again. Thank you. That was wonderful. You've talked and we've discussed um, about generally about stress, and then more specifically about um, the biology of stress and stressors and how it affects the brain. Is there is there any sort of key points you want to leave listeners with?
Yeah. Yes, I would love to. The work that you all do is really hard, and it's important to acknowledge that, and that you absolutely deserve to have full and healthy lives. And the work you do puts you at some risk. So understanding that you're going to encounter stressful situations because that's the job. The job is the stress. That stress reaction, if you can be aware of it, learn to recognize it, you can use it to your advantage. But relaxation is also in our brain, right? We have a
Mm,
relaxation response. We have relaxers, just like we have stressors. When the stress response is over, do something to kick off that relaxation response to center yourself.
mhm.
And that this takes time and practice to do. And that over time, you will find what works for you. You'll find the breathing exercises that work. You'll find the healthy lifestyle
Mm.
um, things that work for you. And we can talk more about like some health coaching principles in future episodes,
Yeah.
how to actually change behavior as we go forward. But that you absolutely um, deserve to have a relaxed and healthy life, and this can help you move towards it because it's in your brain, not in your mind.